Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Synergy Digital Talks. I am Sergey Gasparian, a business development executive in Synergy, and today's moderator. Synergy is a leading software provider specializing in the design and implementation of comprehensive systems for aid management. 26 years ago, Synergy pioneered the notion of country-led aid information management system and has become a thought leader at the intersection of software and development effectiveness. And ever since, we have been supporting governments in aid management, offering our proprietary product, Synergy DAD, the Development Assistant Database. It has become the most widely adopted aid information management system globally, with 37 country governments operating the customized solution nationwide. In 2009, Synergy initiated the creation of the DAD community practice, with several successfully held conferences. Harnessing the power of the digital era, we are today presenting Synergy Digital Talks as a platform for aid effectiveness and digital transformation practitioners to come together and explore the role of GovTech in advancing development effectiveness. The first session of Synergy Digital Talks looks at development effectiveness from the government perspective. On Wednesday, we will tackle this question from the point of view of development partners, and on Thursday, we will see the technology for aid management in action. As for today, we will gain valuable insights from a distinguished panel of speakers regarding the government's perspective. Now, let's welcome our speakers. So, we have Elizabeth Agathin, the Principal Secretary of Ministry of Finance, National Planning and Trade of the Seychelles. We have Edward Chonia, the Deputy Director of Ministry of Finance of Ghana. We have Jacqueline Koning, an international development expert and technical assistant at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development of Zimbabwe. Today, our speakers will delve into various aspects of aid management and development coordination projects. Throughout the session, please address your questions to our speakers in the group chat, and we will respond to them at the end. You can also send the questions directly to Lili Makarian or use the Q&A module available in Zoom. And if everyone can hear me well, we can start. So I will address my first question to Elizabeth to reflect on her recent essential involvement in the digitalization efforts of the government of Seychelles. Elizabeth, hello. Thank you for joining us today. Can you provide some background information on the government of Seychelles' development goals and the specific challenges or needs in terms of managing foreign aid? Basically, would you please describe the situation in the country right before the digitalization?
Good afternoon, and thank you for Sergey for the question. From Seychelles' perspective, when we look at our development agenda, maybe to set the scene, Seychelles is currently working on its second national development strategy. And looking at it, we've identified 5 priority areas going forward for the next 5 years. And one of the key areas in there is your transformative economic agenda, which includes the whole digitalization agenda and that of the digital economy. Furthermore, we have the long-term vision of the country, which is to have a resilient and responsible, prosperous nation, which is well-educated, healthy, who can actually live together in harmony with the wider world and nature. And therefore, we need to find ways in which we can bring all these elements together. So hence why we saw that digitalization for us is the way for us to go. As a small island nation, as a small island state, we also have certain other key risks and issues that we need to address, such as climate change and other international commitments that the country has made, which needs to be mainstreamed into our own our development agenda. And then to that whole mix come the whole foreign aid agenda. And how do we manage that, right? It's critical for us to manage the aid and manage it in a way which is transparent, because then this helps us in accessing it. Seychelles, as a high-income small island state, have difficulties nowadays to access ODAs. But for those we're accessing, we need to be able to report on, show our record, and be transparent in the manner in which we manage it. Hence why, for us, it was important to have such as a system as the aid management system and digitalize the process, move away from the manual processes which existed.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And overall, based on your point of view, what were the key motivations from the government of Seychelles, but also in this scenario, the African Development Bank, to invest in the eight information management system? And would you please describe a little bit more how did it align with the country's development agenda?
For us, in terms of the key motivations, like I said, the government of Seychelles decided that as we move forward, and also in implementing the whole result-based management across government, the digitalization agenda was a key component, right? Digitalization agenda as well as open governance was a key component in that. So looking at that, we had to move away from a lot of the manual processes which existed, and in that instance in the aid management sphere. And it was time consuming to be doing everything manually. And also the fact that we need to be able to provide feedback, generate reports, conduct audit, and all of that needs to be done in a timely manner. Having all of these processes manually, we were not always able to deliver on our commitments in a timely manner. And this in itself is problematic for us. And the national development agenda, again, of the country has one of the key themes, which is governance. And for us, digitalizing everything aligns with the thematic area of governance, having proper governance within the whole PFM system, within the whole governance system. So this was one of the, this is the main key motivation for us. And how ADB comes in there is ADB being a trusted development partner for the country, in having the conversation with our development partners and with them understanding what constraints we have, what challenges we have, seeing how they can assist us. And hence, this is how this came about, because then it's a win-win situation. As a country, we're able to report back to them better on whatever assistance they are providing to us. But in the same time, they are helping to build the capacity and build institutional systems in countries. So it's a win-win situation for both.
Perfect. And considering that we have many participants sharing the same interest and maybe even experiencing similar challenges, I want to ask the following question. So, when the decision to develop the eight information management system was made, basically, what were the next steps? How did the government identify the areas and processes to be digitalized first under the umbrella of development coordination?
Okay, so first of all, for us, the most important thing was to be able to sit down, have that discussion internally, and prepare sort of do some sort of a diagnostic. What is it that is working for us? What is it that is not working? And when we have sort of the development aid coordination discussion with our partners, such challenges were constantly being highlighted. So for us, then it was sitting down, putting together a concept note. And the concept note basically is governed by what were the weaknesses, what were the gaps and challenges being highlighted, and what was the end product that we wanted. Ultimately, what do we want out of such system? What is it that we want it to do? So I think it's very important that we have, one needs to have all of this laid out at the beginning, because then it helps with the processes. Because the other thing is also to identify the processes and make sure that these processes exist. It's at least the processes is there, although on paper, but it exists on paper. Then it enables the digitalization process to be much more seamless. And following that, then it's the question of financing, right? Going out, discussing with partners, or even internally, if you have the necessary resources budget, and then how do you finance such system? So for us, this is how we did it. We identify the challenges, and like I said, this was something done in coordination with our development partners when we have our coordination sort of agenda discussion. And once these challenges are identified, what is the ultimate aim? Where is it that we want to go? What is the end product? And then we work from there with the partners, see who's able to finance, who's able to assist us in that endeavor.
And Elizabeth, was it easy to accept that new change, or internally, maybe even within the ministry, you felt that some people or some of the procedures are not that easy to change? And what were the steps taken by you and your department?
Change management is always something very, very difficult. And especially with the whole digitalization agenda, I think sometimes there is a little bit of fear of digitalizing because you don't know what comes next. But for us, I think in addressing the change management, we try to address it from a perspective of it is just going to make your work much easier. It's going to bring about effectiveness. At the end of the day, we are all winners in this situation. Not to look at it as something which is going to be more work for you. So that's the approach we took. Yes, it was not always easy for everybody. And also the fact that not all processes were written down, not all SOPs existed. So it made the process a little bit more difficult. Hence why I said if anybody is thinking about undertaking such exercise, it's important to always have the SOPs always written down. It's there, and then it helps the digitalization process. But change management, change of mindset is key. So in doing that process, you need to have that sort of you need to have the plan of the change management and change mindset as well to accompany the digitalization process.
That is very correct. And overall, how did Seychelles ensure the long-term sustainability of the system? I think this is a very important question for all of our participants who are at some way in this journey.
Yeah, I think in order to ensure the long-term sustainability, one of the key point is to make sure that there is ownership. Yes, you work with companies, you work with other people to develop the system, but the country needs to own the system. There needs to be that ownership because at the end of the day, you're going to be the one that who's using it. And also there is the element of capacity building. So these two, the ownership and the capacity building and the training is key because without the proper capacity building, then people will not be able to use the system properly. And it's important to be able to have continuous capacity building, documentation of the system, of the processes, manuals, all of that needs to be in place to be able to ensure that that long-term sustainability. Because those who's been trained today might leave tomorrow, so there's always needs to be that constant training, but also to have that documentation there to inform the new ones coming in eventually. And like I said, also the ownership.
And also, as an island country, would you highlight some specific procedures or differences in the coverage of the system, or in general in the coverage of development coordination?
As an island country, I don't think it's much different from others. What there is more a little bit of constraints in terms of the capacity constraints. So for us, it's more or less the same people doing everything, the same different projects, different things. So it's more or less the capacity constraints, also the human element in terms of people who will be able to use the system to the level you want them to do. So these are things which is a little bit specific to SIDS in terms of like I said, human resource availability, capacity constraints. But in terms of what the system will address and others, I don't think it differs much from other larger economies or larger countries as such.
All right. And in general, what one major advice or insight would you offer to other countries looking to embark on such a similar journey?
I think that the major one would be to make sure that processes are documented. It's written there, it's written down, and hence that helps with the process, the digitalization process, but also to have the ownership and to have that sort of change of mindset, communication plan accompanying that process. Because yes, change is always difficult for anybody, but especially in the era of digitalization, it's something that we need to approach really well and to be mindful of. So the change management and also to make sure that we have written SOPs, things are written down, we have very good documentation at the start of it all.
And in order to be very practical, would you let us know how many months it took for you and for the department to reach this stage?
It's taken us a while, nearly a year or a little bit more actually. Like I said, capacity constraint is a big issue. It's not an excuse, but it's we see that it does hamper the progress. Things could have gone much faster. But then sometimes people have competing priorities and you try to see which one you do first. But at the end of the day, also the change management, because it's a constant thing trying to get people to understand you might as well deal with this today because the efficiency that it will bring tomorrow. So for us, this has been the journey thus far.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for overall sharing the government journey of digitalization. And it is worth noting that the aid information management system will developed by Synergy. It will go live soon. And to see the solution, of course, this is a message to our audience. You should not miss the third session of Digital Talks this Thursday, where we will explore the modern aid information management system based on this very recent implementation in the Seychelles. So with Elizabeth, we discussed the steps taken by government embarking on the initiation of this digitalization journey of aid management. And now I am asking Edward Chonia from the Ministry of Finance of Ghana to explore Ghana's digitalization journey in action, because he was involved in development coordination for more than a decade. So Edward, hello. Ghana has been using Synergy, a DAD-powered aid information management system, basically for nearly a decade. Could you highlight some of the key challenges that the system initially addressed, and then overall improvements it has brought to aid management in Ghana during this time?
Okay, thank you. So for us, prior to the aid management system, we were using an Excel template which was developed by Danida to collect data. Just by that, you can assume the complexity of that process. What we used to do was that this template, we will send the template out quarterly to our line staff and our development partners across board. And we have quite a number of development partners to fill in and then submit to us for review, collation, and to allow us decision making. This process was, to say the least, tedious because the challenges were myriad. We had deadlines to receive this data. Most of the time, the deadlines were exceeded by the partners and our line staff. The quality of data was an issue. You know, most of the time when it comes to the work of data, it will be given to new staff or interns. So we had a lot of quality issues. The data was inconsistent. It was not aligned. So those are key challenges that we faced. And imagine you send templates out in Excel. Everybody submits it. We now have to sit, sort it, group it, collate it, and make sense of the data. That was really difficult. Only a few people in the directorate had the capacity to do such analysis. And during budget preparation, anytime there were changes in the requests for data from our development partners or our aid portfolio, it was a big challenge for us. So you could see that based on these challenges, we needed a system, and the synergy aims came in handy. What it has allowed us to do, the improvements it has brought include ease of data collection. Staff as well as DPs can query the data and validate the data. So now instead of data collection on a quarterly basis, we do data validation. What we did in Ghana was to give access to all our development partners to the system. So whilst our staff in the ministry are seeing the data, DPs, the development partners, are also seeing the same data. So wherever there are inconsistencies, it's easy to fish it out and then clear it. The system also came with an audit trail. So at every point, as system administrators, we can tell who inputted data here, who changed this, and it created ownership for those who were inputting the data.
Thank you, Edward. And overall, would you able to comment how have aid management practices evolved in Ghana during these years?
For us, it is, if you take the before we had the system and now, if you were not in the ministry, you don't know the impact that the system has had. Now what we have is streamlined data directly into the budget preparation process, because our data is live, it is updated on a daily basis as and when. So there are no lags in the data. It makes decision making instant. You can see at a glance where the gaps are. If there are decisions you need to take, you are able to take that decision. And also, when it comes to allocation of resources, the system has come in handy because we don't have multiple Excel files to work with. So let me give you an example. In 2021, during budget preparation process, we ran some reports to see which parts of the country certain kinds of support were going to, based on what government has planned to do. So we said, no, if you check out this part of the country, so much aid is going into agri value chains. So there's no need for the government then to allocate same amount of money for value chain agriculture in those areas. So then we use the government funds to areas that needed more. So these are some of the ways that we use the system that have changed how we work.
I think the last example is very significant. So, Edward, we are also aware that the government has intentions to upgrade the system. And from your point of view, what are the primary motivations or expected benefits of upgrading such system?
So we've been using this system fully from 2016. There have been changes in technology and requirements over the period. What you would realize is that we have so many people with so many backgrounds, so many different areas of focus using the system on a regular basis. So definitely over the time, you would have changing user requirements. For instance, some of the development partners, the way they operate, the system is not able to capture it exactly as they do in terms of, let me use an example, USAID. USAID allocations are based on programs and they do top-ups annually. These are not necessarily extensions of a program which has a fixed duration. So the system kind of lags in those fields. So we need an upgrade to meet some of the new user requirements that have arisen. Also, when you see the architecture and the development of IT from 2016, it's like in this new era from 2016, a system in 2016 is like a millennium old. We need to upgrade the security features. The data we had when we started is not the same data we have now. We have a lot of data on the system. We need to improve the security features of the system to prevent cyber attacks and loss of data and all that. Those are some of the areas where we looked in that we are based on which we are requesting this upgrade.
Edward, and overall, what other factors or considerations should other countries, other ministry departments keep in mind when planning such a significant system upgrade?
It will be based on country context. So I think for the first step will be the utilization of the system. No matter the level of system you have, you would only be able to know the gaps in the system when you use it and when people of different backgrounds use it. And you also need to provide a channel for feedback. As users use the system, you should have a system to collate the feedback and analyze the feedback that they give you on the system. This is key because you don't just request an upgrade for the sake that there's a new system or there are new components. It might not be every component that you use on the system. So, for example, if you look at our request, there's a map element in the system. However, our upgrade does not really talk about maps because most of our users don't use the map functionality. So our upgrade will not need the map. But a different country context might require a detailed upgrade of the map section of the system. So it's based on user feedback. People must first of all use the system to be able to know what they want. Also, I think partner countries that need the system must be willing to invest in the IT infrastructure needed for such a system. Depending on the level of sensitivity and transparency of data in country, you need a solid IT team who are well trained to manage the back end of the system. You also need a very good IT hardware and security systems to host such a system.
Thank you, Edward. And we also know that at the ministry there is a public investment and assets division. And in some government institutions, the function of development coordination and public investment are strongly interconnected to overall raise the efficiency of development efforts. What is your outlook on cross-departmental collaboration within the ministry?
So for us here in Ghana, the Public Investment and Assets Division is separate from the division that coordinates aid. However, we work closely. We collaborate a lot. However, we have functionally separate mandates. So for us here in Ghana, the Public Investment Division concentrates more on government of Ghana funds being utilized through private-public partnership arrangements. That's the main focus. However, for us here in Ghana, all aid inflows are equally public funds based on our PFM Act. So, and from 2015, most of our DPs are also aligned towards more of PPP, public-private partnership. So wherever there are projects or programs that require donor funding through a PPP arrangement, we play a key role and then we collaborate closely with them. So that is how we've been working. For instance, currently our Public Investment and Assets Division is developing a system. They are developing a system called the Integrated Bank of Projects. This will have the database of all GOG, all Government of Ghana projects in there. However, as part of our upgrade request, we are requesting for the ability of our Synergy AIM system to be able to interface with their system so that wherever there's a need for development partner data, there will be that seamless transfer of data and that synergy between those two systems. Yeah, so this is how we collaborate here in Ghana.
Perfect. And Edward, what would be the last overall message to other countries looking to embark on a similar journey?
They should start now. Just start it, implement it, but please make sure that you have a pool of staff being trained, and make sure you have training for trainers, because in government sectors we tend to have a very high turnover. So training and retraining is key. Capacity building of the staff is key. And like we did in Ghana, Synergy came over to Ghana, trained the entire directorate, and had training for the selected administrators. And over the years, the administrators have been managing the system fully. When new staff come into the division, they are trained. Some administrators have left, but the knowledge is still within the division because we keep training people all the time. Yes, so that would be my advice to them.
Thank you, Edward, for providing such a comprehensive overview of Ghana's experience. And for our audience, I would like to remind to address your questions to our speakers in the group chat. We also have some questions and we will respond to them at the end. So as we have been discussing cross-departmental collaborations, now let's give the floor to Jacqueline Koning, an international development expert who will elaborate on her experience in enhancing development processes in Zimbabwe. Hello, Jacqueline. What is your current mission in Zimbabwe in the scope of development effectiveness?
Hi, Sergio. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. I've been working with the government of Zimbabwe since 2018 to strengthen development cooperation effectiveness. We have in that time put in place a development cooperation policy and a procedures manual. We have established the Zimbabwe Development Projects Management Information System, DevProMIS, and we have started taking a sector approach so as to have more comprehensive platforms within the key sectors to channel resources.
Perfect. And could you please provide an overview of the Development Projects Management Information System, the DevProMIS, and its main objective in the context of development assistance?
All right, so the DevProMIS is a little bit unlike the systems of Seychelles and Kenya in that it comprises the development assistance database, but in addition to that, it also integrates a public investment management suite, the PIMS, as well as a fully fledged monitoring and evaluation module. So we basically have three systems rolled into one. The reason for this was when we started developing the DevProMIS, we did some consultations in the Ministry of Finance, and we came to realize that, yes, we can establish just the development assistance database, but there are needs beyond just tracking projects that are funded by development partners. So the system as it is now, it contains both internally and externally funded projects. So projects funded by government as well as projects funded by non-government sources. It provides a project pipeline database. This means that we have set up the system so that it tracks projects from concept stage. The whole appraisal system is done in the system. So you have the record of who approved, when it was approved, if it's getting stuck, where is it getting stuck, and so on. The main objectives for the system, I think these mirror what the other speakers have said. So we want to improve allocative efficiency. We have to improve transparency and accountability. And obviously, we want to improve the impact that we get from development resources.
And Jacqueline, as you already told that there are different modules in the system, in your opinion, what are the advantages of having all those functions integrated into a single system compared to a situation where the government has a standalone system for every single of those functions?
What the system has allowed us to do, because it contains projects both from government-funded sources as well as development partner sources, It has allowed us to set up the system so that we can link projects to the program-based budget. So Ministry of Finance, Zimbabwe uses program-based budget. The structure of that is that each budget vote has a number of programs with a number of sub-programs. So the system is configured so that it links each project to a specific sub-program, the outcomes or the outputs of a sub-program, which then in turn links to the outcomes of the program of that budget vote. And then that in turn links to a relevant ministry strategic plan or to a sector development plan. That in turn is linked to the national development strategy.
And there's a very interesting flow of different information. And we also probably have a question of data consolidation as well. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on data consolidation from different sources and how this contributes to more effective decision making?
So the database of the integrated system obviously then contains the projects from the development assistance database. Those are the ones funded by development partners, as well as the projects from the PIMS, which are the government project, the government funded projects. So we have all of the projects on one database. The M&E module can then draw on all of these projects to provide linkages, as I explained in the previous question, so that it is possible to track input all the way through to outputs, outcomes, and then the objectives of the national development strategy. It helps us to streamline and harmonize a number of processes that were done completely independently previously.
Perfect. And finally, for those who may be considering implementing a similar integrated system, what advice or insights would you offer to ensure successful adoption and utilization of such a system?
Okay, I'm going to try and not repeat too much of what was already said. I think our experience here it was an incredibly slow development process. It took more than 3 years. COVID-19 was partly to blame for that because we started in 2019. But the other reason why it took such a very long time was because of the different modules of the system. We had to do very broad-based consultations. We wanted a system that would allow development partners to be able to access the system and create their projects and enter their data into the system. And we wanted the different line ministries to be able to do the same. So there was a lot of consultation, and I think decision-making slows down substantially when you have that kind of very broad consultation. It has paid off in the sense that we have markers in the system that help us track national priorities. So not only the no one left behind agenda of the SDGs, but we are also able to track gender empowerment, youth empowerment, people living with disabilities, as well as climate financing. We can track all of those in the system. We have at the moment just over 100 projects already created in the system. We went live in the first quarter of 2023 of this year. The bulk of those projects have been created by development partners. So I think a key challenge for us now is to get the line ministries on board. I think that has been a challenge up to now. And I think, yeah, that links to what Elizabeth and Edward said already in terms of the importance of a change management strategy, trying to, in a sense, sell the advantages of using the system. And if that doesn't work, we will have to figure out the stick. We're focusing on the carrot for now, But if that doesn't work, obviously there will need to be some kind of a stick. You don't get money for your project if your project is not in the system, something to that effect. But we're hoping that the carrot will do the trick. What else? I think, yes, our user training was a little bit premature. We did the user training in 2022, and then, as I said, the system only went live in early 2023. So we had to do a whole round of refresher training pretty much for all users. So that was perhaps a little bit of planning that went askew there. And I think the final thought that I can give to people who are in the process of developing such a system is make peace with the fact that your system is never going to be developed. It is always going to be a work in progress. Once you go live, you will get feedback from users and you will be making changes. And as things progress, you will find that you want to capture things that maybe weren't captured before. So again, you're making changes. It's always a work in progress. Yeah, and good luck.
Yes, good luck to everyone who is part of that mission. Jacqueline, would you be able to give us information about how the decision about the system coverage was made? Basically, some other countries, they decide to start from a small coverage, but in Zimbabwe, I think the decision was different. Would you be able to comment the rationale behind that decision?
When we did the needs assessment way back in 2018, the intention was originally to only focus on the development assistance database. We had a round of consultations within the Ministry of Finance to try and figure out what data would the different departments require from such a system. And during these consultations, it became very clear that yes, we needed such a system, but we needed it to be more than just development partner projects. At that time, the Infrastructure Development Department, who is very much part and parcel of the DevProMIS, had a Excel-based database of projects. Now, if you're trying to attract investment into your country, then just having an Excel database of projects it's not the optimal vehicle. We also found out that we needed to find a way to harmonize the way in which development partner projects were being appraised to that of which government projects were being appraised, because there were just too many discrepancies between the two appraisal systems. And I think all of these inputs from the different departments led us to conclude that spending money on just a development assistance database, while it would be worthwhile, it was not optimal. That the opportunity cost of just focusing on one instead of focusing on all three was quite substantial.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you so much. So,
sure.
I think this is the part when all of our audience members can submit their questions. And we already have some questions. And one of them is regarding the management of KPIs within DevProMIS. I think this question is for you, Jacqueline.
All right, so we have KPIs at the level of the National Development Strategy. These KPIs are then translated by different line ministries and different sectors into sector outcomes. We then have the program-based budget, which basically allocates resources through programs and sub-programs to the implementation of the sector development strategies or the strategic plans of the line ministries. So that is how we are linking and tracking the KPIs, because the projects in the system it's mandatory for them to be linked to the sub-programs and programs of a spending unit. And we can then track these inputs and the outcomes that we achieve through these inputs all the way through to the KPIs in the National Development Strategy.
Thank you, Jacqueline. The other question we have is for Elizabeth, and the question is regarding the following. Was the system implemented by the government in Seychelles, or it was implemented by another organization? And here maybe I would like to paraphrase it a little bit more. Elizabeth, if you can hear me, basically how you decided what would be the best approach to procure a system or have another like extended vendor build the system from scratch or have an internal team.
Thank you, Sergey. First of all, the system here was government-led. So it's because it's a system which is to be used by the government for official records. So it was government-led. In terms of the processes followed, yes, like I said, once we knew what we wanted, secured the financing, then there's the whole processes that goes with it. We did a little bit of research on our own to see, do you build one from scratch? Do you actually get one off the shelf? So in doing that research, that sort of little background check on what exists, speaking to other peers, other countries, you realize that this is not something new. This is something which exists out there, and companies like Synergy has done it in other jurisdictions. So it was more or less get something which exists, which has been tried and tested, and then sort of tailor it to the needs of our needs and in terms of the needs of the overarching digital architecture in the country.
Perfect. Do we have any other questions? Not at this moment, maybe, but you can always send your questions to us, to the organizing team, and we will make sure to send everyone the video recording at the end. So for those who are able to connect not from the beginning, you are able to view the whole session from start. And we have the last question, I think, regarding, again, Jacqueline. So there is a comment regarding, so at this moment, based on key performance indicators, DevProMIS is currently focused on using like financial KPIs. Is that correct?
Yes and no. Obviously, because all projects are linked to the votes of the different ministries and government agencies, we do track the financial data, the commitments, expenditure data as well. But the system is also set up to have an M&E component for each project. So for each project, there is a logical framework where the person or the institution who creates the project has to input the indicators, and these are normally not financial indicators. These would be indicators such as GDP growth or availability or access to public health services, etc. So we are not just using financial information. We are tracking the actual indicators used by the projects. These indicators are then linked to the outputs and outcomes of each ministry, which in turn are linked to sector outcomes and to the KPI in the National Development Strategy. Yes.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. And we have another question regarding what are the general views regarding building a system using open source software. And I think our colleagues from Ghana can give their feedback on that part. Edward, maybe you can tell us a bit more. Maybe if you have your colleagues there as well, you can just basically share your experience for that part.
Thank you. If you can clarify the question for me, using open source software to develop the system from scratch.
Yes, that's the your views in regards to building a system using the open source software.
Well, you can try. It's country specific. It will be in context. So if you are in a society where transparency is extremely high and the quality of data is not such a high priority in the list, you can use open source software to try. For instance, the IRT systems. It's open source, it's free, but there are issues with data quality and traceability of data. So, in my experience, it will be country specific based on what you prioritize. Yes. But for us, where the system is linked to a budgeting process and linked to an auditing process, open source will not do for us.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you. And we have, I think, the last question for Elizabeth. In case of Seychelles, how did you make the link between the aid information management system and the FMIS? Basically, the financial management information system.
For us, actually, the EMS came at the right time, in the sense that we are also in the process of developing a new FMIS system. So that enabled us to make sure that in developing the aid information management system, we take into account the new system that is going to come on board and cater for the integration that needs to happen. Currently, like you highlighted before, AIMS will go live very soon. It will not necessarily be linked to the old legacy system of financial management that we have, but we are looking at linking it with the new IFMIS system that's going to come on board in the next year.
Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth. And overall, thank you to all our participants for the questions. I think we would end the session here at this point. And dear colleagues, speakers, partners, guests, thank you very much. As closing remarks, I would like to say that at Synergy, our commitment lies in collaborating with governments or organizations to drive innovation in overall GovTech sector as well. And we specialize in leveraging our deep expertise to design and implement different systems that have the power to transform, and in this scenario, aid management, as presented in today's discussion. So as we wrap up this session, we extend our appreciation to each and every one of you for your participation in our online event. And let me tell you a little bit more what awaits us tomorrow. And we would be very glad to see you all in our next session, where we will continue our exploration of aid management. However, from the unique perspectives of our two esteemed speakers. The first speaker tomorrow would be Henry Asor Nakang from the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning of Nigeria, who is also the chair of International Aid Transparency Initiatives Governance Board. And we are also going to have Lee Mitchell, Chief Technical Advisor for Aid Effectiveness at UNDP. So join us again tomorrow using the same Zoom link as we go deeper into the great world of GovTech and its impact on aid management. Thank you everyone for your presence today, and we look forward to your continued engagement tomorrow.